turn off the camera. The voice is flat, not angry, not loud, just a switch flipped in a dead room. Then the click plastic against plastic as the body cam goes black. Silence slams shut like a freezer door. Amara Cross tastes copper. Her breath comes in hard needles. The roadside shoulder is a gravel rasp under her cheek, heat trapped in it from a Mississippi dusk that refuses to cool. Tires hiss past in the distance, slowing, then speeding up, like witnesses changing their minds at the last second. A radio murmurs, too far away to help. The air smells like hot pine and diesel and the sour backwash of fear. Ma'am, stop resisting, another voice says, even though she isn't moving. Her wrists are plastic bitten behind her, her shoulder-sharp glass of pain jammed by a knee that weighs as much as a sky. 3 uniforms, 3 shadows poured across her like oil. Their names are sewn in cursive on their chests. God stitched above the flag, stitched above the pistol. She is 31 years old, 12 weeks pregnant, lips cracked, eyes stinging. She counts her breaths because the only thing that has shape left is counting. In, 4, out, 4. She tries to say I'm pregnant, but the sentence snags on itself and dies. Gravel dust floats. The sirens she thought would save her were never called. Turn it back on when we're done, the flat voice says. Her scream breaks something open, and the night swallows it whole. Across town, Agent Nathaniel Nate Cross FBI Special Agent. Evidence Response Team once. Field agent still by force of habit hears nothing. He is stirring a pot of red beans with one hand and reading a warrant application with the other. When his phone vibrates on the counter, it's the small, ordinary sound a life makes right before it bursts. He doesn't know it yet, but the rest of his life has already ended. Hollow Creek, Mississippi, pretends to be quieter than it is. The town square has a courthouse with white columns and a clock that misses noon by 3 minutes daily, its own small rebellion. Dogwoods pool shadow over benches. On Sundays the hymn leaks from the First Baptist like warm syrup. On Fridays, high school lights throw sharp geometry over a field where boys collide under a banner that says, Tradition. Nate and Amara moved here 2 years ago. After Quantico and New Orleans and too many apartments jammed with boxes, she was born 3 counties over and always called Hollow Creek what it was, a place where you can hear yourself think. If you want to like what you hear, she taught art at the Community Center. Inc., the patient miracle of line over paper. He worked out of the FBI's Jackson Field office, sometimes driving to Baton Rouge for joint ops, sometimes just home at 6 with shoulders dropped and a joke. He saved all day. He is a tall man who moves like he's listening for glass. She is 5'7", luminous in that everyday way that makes strangers talk better than they are. When they argue, it sounds like weather passing. When they make up, it sounds like rain on a tin roof. On weeknights, they cook. The red beans are his grandmother's, scratched into memory with the precision of a lab report. He swears you can hear when the Holy Trinity hits oil, onions, celery, green bell pepper, because it's the same sigh people make when they stop pretending they aren't tired. She swears his rice is sorcery. They cut Galapagos thin enough to see the seeds' little moons. On the fridge, a sonogram printout with a date and a peanut flicker. They don't have a name yet. They trade possibilities like Secret, Sidon, Asa, Naomi, Zuri, testing the syllables for how they might sound when shouted across a park. They practice future tenses. He will baby-proof the outlets. She will keep painting until her ankles complain. He will try to sleep in. She will pretend not to check if he's breathing. Silence is a motif in their house, but not the scary kind. The kind that holds you up. Sometimes she will stand in the hallway and draw him in the doorway using only shadows. She likes how his silhouette is a language she understands. Sometimes he will sit at the edge of the bed in dawn's gray and watch her breathe, counting it the way divers count seconds underwater, long, steady, shaped by trust. He keeps his Glock in a lockbox. She keeps her brushes in a coffee tin that used to hold chicory. Neither of them thinks much about either. They talk about the town like gardeners. Sheriff Clay Maddox has been re-elected twice and wears his hat low. Folks say he's old. Folks also say the school needs burning down. Pastor Dinwiddie thinks he's God's deputy. D.A. Loretta Pike eats cruelty like citrus, neat and pastry. The roads buckle in summer and the budgets buckle year-round. Hollow Creek does not like questions, but it loves a parade. Amara knows where not to drive after dark. Old knowledge, like recipes for survival. She texts Nate her location when she's running late, even when she isn't. He sends her a thumbs up she can feel. On the day it starts, she is on her way home from the community center. Clay Street to Old County Road. A patrol car idles at the edge of the Dollar Star lot. Windows up, I see a white noise machine against the wet evening. She passes and the headlights rise, floating behind like an undertow. At home, Nate stirs, reads, tastes, adds salt, reads again. He thinks about a case filer, Flophouse, a truck, a number that almost means something. He thinks about their baby like he's already late for a meeting he can't miss. He glances at the sonogram. Little storm of light. His throat gets tight the way it does when music sneaks up in a grocery store. He wonders if he will be a good father. He pictures himself holding a tiny hand, and for the first time in weeks he doesn't picture a crime scene. His phone is face down, buzzing. On Old County Road, blue lights feather the pines. They say routine traffic stop the way you say freak accident. As if the routine is the accident and the accident is the routine. Amara sees the light before she hears the siren, the way lightning always wins. She signals, she slows, she pulls over where the gravel shoulders off into ditchweeds. The cruiser noses up too close behind, impatience in chrome. Another one arrives, fast, then quiet, the way cowards hunt. The first deputy is young and already used to it. Brent Stone, his brother Wyatt, looks carved out of something cheap. Their boots hit gravel, rhythm firm. The third man, Cade Harlan, hangs back, eyes flat like a pond after a rock. Evening, Brent says. He is smiling the way a dog smiles when it's not sure if it will bite you or wag. Roll over and keep your hands where I can see him. My hands are here, Amara says, both on the wheel, shaking just enough to make the keys glint. You know how fast you were going? Yes, sir. 48 and a 50. See, that ain't what I clocked. You got a tail light out. No, sir. It was replaced last week. You calling me a liar? No, sir. He's already leaning in. His flashlight is a white baton tapping its tempo across her dashboard. The light finds her face and lingers like a hand that doesn't belong. Step out the vehicle, sir, if I could ask what's the probable cause. Wyatt laughs. Somebody reads. Her phone is in the cup holder. She moves one hand slow as a page turn. May I call my husband? He step out the vehicle now, Brent says, and his voice goes flat. The kind that changes whether. She steps out. The air hits hot. Pine sap sweetness gone sour. They place her palms on the hood, metal heat-soaking bones. They talk to her like a routine, like a script they memorize between coffee and donuts. Where you comin' from? Community center. I teach art to kids. You teach attitude too. I'm pregnant, she says softly, as if confession is a bargaining chip, as if that word might put a glass wall between her and what's coming. Wyatt glances down at her belly, then away, bored. Congratulations. They find a reason to pat her down. Hands map her without consent, tracing the cartography of humiliation. She tries to keep her breaths even. In for, out for. The hood reflection blurs her eyes into shapes she doesn't recognize. She says please the way people say mercy when they know the rules, but not the exceptions. Across the road in the darkness between pines, a fourth figure watches from a truck with its lights off. Sheriff Clay Maddox. Hat low, cigarette ember, a firefly that forgot the dance. He does not get out. He's field supervising the way a vulture supervises a ditch. Cade's radio chirps. You need me? He asks, not moving. Nah, Brent grins without teeth. We got us a teacher. She's gonna learn. The body cam glows red. Then the voice. Turn off the camera, Clay. You heard me. Clicks. Black. They don't go for weapons, not at first. They go for power, which is the same thing, if you know how to use it. The night grows teeth. Gravel gets intimate. Language loses its verbs. The world narrows to the sound of someone else breathing so close to your ear. You could count his fillings if he had the decency to smile. I'm pregnant, she says again, voice splintering into reeds. What a shame, someone answers. And then the scream unwinds all the way out of her. It is not a woman's scream, not a victim's, it is something older. It is the sound the earth makes when you split it open and put your living there. It is a sound only one person in Hollow Creek will hear for the rest of his life, every night. Vibrating the glass on a bedside table that holds a lockbox and a tin of brushes. When it's done, what remains is procedure. Hands, plastic, zip, words that shine like oil, resisting, suspicious, feared for safety. They discuss the rest with the butcher's efficiency. She fell, someone says. She ran another ads. The versions jockey in the air like mate. Sheriff Maddox inhales, then flicks his cigarette into the ditch and steps out of the truck finally, the gravel telling on him. He looks down at Amara. He sees not a woman, not a mother, not a teacher, not anything difficult. He sees a problem with a shape he's solved before. Get her up, he says. They don't. It's easier this way. Cade opens the passenger door. The interior lights eyes on. Sheriff Maddox stands there, backlit by the polite dome glow. Y'all are gonna write it clean, he says. Traffic stop disorderly. Struck her head when she fled. At a 10 to 96 she was disturbed, unstable. Mention the pregnancy somewhere innocuous. Make M feel like we care. I'll handle Loretta, what about the camera? Brent asks. Glitched, the sheriff says. Weather does hell to these things. They lift Amara like something heavy you don't want to carry. The ditch smells like algae and old tires. The pines keep the secret like country things do. Crickets restart their song, interrupted but not changed. On the hood of her car, her phone buzzes itself toward the edge. Screen lighting, then dimming, then lighting again. The lock screen shows a missed call, Nate. The night keeps its bargain. Nobody sees. Or if they do, they don't. The first thing the system does is call itself a process. Processes are soothing. Processes are math for cruelty. The incident report is 2 pages of choreographed fiction. It reads like a fairy tale told by wolves to lambs. Erratic behavior, evasive movements, a sudden sprint, a tragic fall. It has the comforting grammar of authority sections, subsections, a barcode. There is a timestamp that eats the moment and re-swallows it cleaner. Bodycam footage fails at the moment it should matter most. The red diode blinks, stutters, dies, due to heat stress. It confirms with a shrug and a blistered chart. Sheriff Maddox sends an internal memo about investing in better equipment next fiscal year, CCing a county commissioner who signs contracts like prayers. Dr. Pritchard at the coroner's office takes one look and decides how the story will end. He has the weary cynicism of a man who knows which signatures keep his fluorescent lights on. Subdural hematoma secondary to accidental fall. He writes, hand steady, fetal demise non-viable, estimated gestation 12 weeks. He clicks the dictation pedal and stares at the ceiling until the sentence stops ringing. Loretta Pike schedules a press conference 2 days later. She stands at a podium borrowed from a civic group that keeps a velvet banner in the basement for picnics. She is precise without being warm. The room is hot. The reporters from Jackson are too careful. The local blogger, who sells used trucks on the side, asks if there will be compensation to the husband. Loretta says the county sends thoughts and prayers like postage you put on a letter you never mailed. Detective notes get filed in a folder labeled with numbers that almost mean something. The sheriff's office group chat bleeps with a meme. The deputy who posted it deletes it within 60 seconds, and the sheriff texts focus in all caps. That will read well later if later ever arrives. A report about Amara gets dredged from the community center records. A complaint by a parent who didn't like how her child drew police officers too big and scary. The local station runs it as color. They use the word controversial in a lower third with a question mark. Thoughtfulness at scale. At the FBI office in Jackson, an SAC special agent in charge leans back and says, local matter, keep our heads down unless it grows legs. He says it kindly. He says it the way you say it when your job is to allocate finite attention to infinite nightmares. He phones Nate and speaks slowly, like helping a brother over uneven ground. We'll observe. We'll liaise. Don't make noise. Don't do anything regrettable. Nate breathes and says nothing. The line clicks like a small door closing somewhere he can't see. A church meal train organizes and falls apart over the same weekend. Some casseroles are delivered with notes that say praying for peace, which means many things, none of them helpful. Someone sets a bouquet on the cross's porch with lilies that smell like an argument you can't win. Sheriff Clay Maddox drafts a statement for Facebook. He mentions community. He mentions patience. He mentions truth like a leash. Comments flood. Hearts, flags, scripture, skulls. Underneath a name Nate doesn't know writes she shouldn't have mouthed off. A week is long enough to bury a life and plant a narrative. Dirt goes on top of both and the town pats it flat with the heels of its hands. Inside their house, the sonogram on the fridge is becoming an artifact. Nate wakes at 3:11 a.m. and stands in front of it like a man at a museum exhibit no one else can see. He is not yet an Avenger. He is still a husband who thinks he can fix things by naming them. He tries all the names he knows. Procedure, complaint, oversight, escalation, OPR, civil rights, consent decree. The words line up like soldiers and don't move. In Hollow Creek, silence is not absence. It is policy. Grief has a sound. In Nate's house, it is the faint glassy clink of a spoon against a mug he never drinks from. It is the dull slide of a drawer opened, then closed. It is the whisper of pages as he turns a notebook that does not believe in sleep. He stops shaving. The mirror returns the favor by not judging. His suit jackets begin to hang like abandoned ideas. He opens the lockbox every night and touches the gun but leaves it there. The ritual, a bridge he hasn't crossed. He lines Amara's brushes on the counter and cleans them, bristles fanned like eyelashes drying. He places the sonogram on the table and stares at the little comet of a life that didn't get a chance to flare. Nate was an evidence response team lead once. He knows that the smallest thing is everything. So he goes to the ditch on Old County Road at sunrise, the way fishermen go to water. He walks the shoulder. He catalogues gravel the way a monk counts prayer beads, each gray a different prayer. He finds a scuff where a boot danced on power. He finds a zip tie end 2 inches long, sliced by a blade that left a burr. He finds the butt of a cigarette he picks up with a tissue because habit is a religion. Clay Maddox smokes reds, so do others. That's the point of America. The guilty have allies in statistics. His insomnia turns into reading policy manuals, prosecutors' memos, prior complaints. He files fewer requests and watches the calendar like a lifeguard scanning a crowd for a hand. He calls a civil rights attorney in Jackson who is brave and tired and says, we might push this uphill. He makes a promise to a woman whose voice cracks on the word fetus. And he keeps that promise even when the lawyer can't keep hers, because discovery is a ladder with missing rungs. He dreams. The dreams are technical. They have fluorescence and rubber gloves, and gloves snapping off in slow motion. In the dreams, he never gets to the part where someone apologizes. He stops going to church. He finds himself in parking lots at odd hours, watching the sheriff's office from a distance, counting who goes in and who comes out. He writes down plate numbers and cross-checks them in systems he once scolded junior agents for misusing. He is crossing lines he used to write on whiteboards for rookies. Never do this. The markers squeak in his head. Red, blue, black. In the afternoons he sits at the community center in the room where Amara taught, smelling chalk dust and whispered ambition. He runs his fingers over the newsprint, where children drew police with shoulders as wide as the page. He wonders which child will shrink those shoulders next year and call it progress. The system's resistance doesn't look like a movie. It looks like emails that go to spam. It looks like a clerk who never saw your request. It looks like wait your turn. It looks like a judge who used to fish with a man who used to drink with another man who used to date the DA's cousin. It looks like what it is. A network that calls itself a town. Nate's hands shake when he tries to tie his shoes. Not from fear. From adrenaline never spent. He starts running at night, streets laid out like lines he can't cross without entering someone's ring camera. He counts his breaths to keep himself from counting the ways he wants to end this. He writes Amara letters he doesn't mail and places them under the lockbox. He starts each one the same way. I am trying to be the man you loved and not the man grief is making. He ends them the same way. I am failing. One evening, a voice on the phone tells him an anonymous tip came in for sympathy's sake. The voice is carefully disguised as your static, tinny. The tip is a rumor about a hunting cabin where deputies blow off steam. The tip is a reminder that even in hives, one bee leaves the map. He logs it. He draws a circle around a patch of pines 8 miles north, where the county line shivers into another. He begins to keep burner phones in a cigar box. He writes names on sticky notes in block letters, MADDOX, BSTONE, WSTONE, K Harlan, L Pike, PR1TCHARD. He miswrites each in the same way, zeros for O's, ones for I's, because if anyone takes a picture, the typeface will not match their records. Little ways to live like a ghost. He finds their patterns. Wyatt stops at the Mudcat Diner every Wednesday, sits in the back booth with his back to the wall, orders chicken fried steak and refills his sweet tea until the ice gives up. Brent works out at a gym with a taped heavy bag where he punishes a thing that cannot testify. Cade drives the long way home, avoiding cameras he knows about and missing the ones he doesn't. Clay lowers his patrol hat during funerals and raises it when men who own land walk into rooms. Nate watches. Watching becomes breathing. In bed, finally, he stares at the ceiling fan until it turns into a siren. He puts one hand on the lockbox. He waits for the moment his fingers will decide for him. The house hums. The refractor clock on the stove blinks 12 o'clock like a heartbeat that forgot how to vary. He whispers into the dark, "Tell me what to do." Silence answers, with professionalism. Sheriff Clay Maddox grew up 2 roads shy of nothing and learned early that to break a thing quietly is to keep it yours longer. He is not a cartoon. He loves his daughter. He tips in cash so waitresses won't have to declare it. He can gut a fish and weep at a photograph of boys in uniform moving off a bus. The hat he wears is inherited gravity. He doesn't think of himself as racist. Because the men who taught him to shoot called their dog Blue and voted for a black man once in a county contest no one outside remembered. He believes in order the way a drowning man believes in surfaces. Deputies, Brent and Wyatt Stone, are brothers the way some storms are related. Their father died in a mill accident when a cable snapped and whipped through a room like a god's joke. Their mother drinks. The town handed them badges, the way you hand a man a hammer when you run out of screws. They are capable of gentleness. Both have carried old ladies' groceries to trunks. Both have rescued cats and avoided telling anyone. But gentleness dies in them when they think they have been made small by someone darker, louder, smarter, freer. Cade Harlan is different air. He floats. He does not take risks. He learned the angles and became one, obtuse when pressed, acute when useful. He believes in nothing much. He will be the last to fall if falling happens, because he never leaned in the first place. He goes home to a house that looks staged for an open house. He drinks light beer. He calls his mother on Sundays and reminds her to take her water pills. Loretta Pike is the most complicated. She came from outside Tupelo, then Oxford, then an internship that taught her which asses to kiss and which to kick. She ran on safe, tough talk. She believes she is protecting the county from federal overreach, from activists who use bodies as ladders, from chaos. She lost a brother to fentanyl and sees any grief as a trick. She keeps a file in her desk labeled unruly and files women there. She eats guilt like vitamin chewables. Dr. Pritchard is a tragedy in slow motion, a man who wanted to be a surgeon and became a coroner. He keeps photographs of boats he never bought taped inside a cabinet. He tells himself he is saving lives by keeping his job, by preventing worse men from taking it. He is wrong, but he says it like a spell. They meet in hallways, in tailgates, in a courthouse stairwell that smells like cough drops and ghosts. They do not conspire, not in the way movies mean. They nod, they infer, they draft sentences that sound like care. They wonder whether a black FBI agent will make this different and decide it will not if they keep their shoulders squared. Clay keeps his own private fear like a coin in his pocket. Not jail, not scandal, irrelevance. He imagines what it would mean to be the man who lost control. He imagines being known and then unknown. He tries to feel remorse and feels instead a tightening in the scalp, the kind of pressure that precedes a migraine and a lie. Wyatt sleeps badly. He sees Amara's face in the TV reflection, hovering over a baseball game he isn't watching. He touches his face at the memory of her saying please and hates himself for feeling anything like shame. He tells himself the story the men told each other by the ditch, each iteration sandpapering conscience into something smooth enough to sit on. Brent is angrier. He looks at his hands and flexes them, the way men do who rely on them to make their point. He starts a fight in a bar with a man who looks like Nate and finishes it badly. He bleeds in the men's room and loves how the mirror doesn't judge. Cade buys a new dashcam at his own expense and installs it like a religious convert, hoping to accrue credit in a heaven where policies are saints. Loretta drafts a memo to the state AG, framing the event as regrettable but explicable. She deletes the word regrettable, then deletes the word explicable, then sends it without adjectives because adjectives get subpoenaed. Dr. Pritchard dreams of rivers. In the dream, he can unspool time backwards like a torn bandage and the wound will close underneath, pink and forgiven. He wakes with his palms sweaty and a sentence in his mouth he won't say, I am sorry. None of them are monsters. That's what makes what comes next possible. The first thing Nate buys is a spiral notebook from a gas station with a raccoon on it drinking coffee. He likes the irony, an animal known for stealing, keeping his secrets. He writes with blocked letters that look like they could stand trial. He parks 2 streets over from the sheriff's office in a rental car he pays cash for. He times the shift change. He notes how the stones leave together, as if they were born on the same umbilical and not yet cut. He follows at a distance. Only someone who has been followed knows is safe. They go to the mud. He goes to the lot next door and watches their reflections in the window glass while a neon catfish blinks like a heartbeat. He builds a map. Red yarn is a myth. He uses pencil lines so faint they can be denied. He circles the hunting cabin tip and drives the road at dusk, turning off his headlights where the pines lean in like conspirators. He finds the cabin, a tin roof, a porch swing stilled by heat, a Confederate flag once nailed to a beam now wadded in the corner, a rumor-made wood. Inside, there are beer cans and a couch where secrets flatten their spines. On a nail an extra set of zip ties, brand matched to the burr he found on Old County Road. He wears nitrile gloves and the gloves squeak a tiny protest he shushes with breath. He closes the door and leaves the dust to settle like a jury. He acquires tools. A burner with signal, a second with wicker, a GoPro he can nest under a bumper, a dashcam disabler he swore he would only ever read about. He borrows the eyes of the town through public cameras, a mosaic that proves civilization is the art of watching and pretending not to. He doesn't tell the Bureau. He doesn't tell God. The first act of vengeance is not violent. He leaks. He sends a packet to a blogger 2 towns over too far to be cowed, close enough to smell blood. It contains a photograph of the cabin, a copy of Dr. Pritchard's autopsy with the phrase, "accidental fall," highlighted in the shade of a bruise, and a 1-minute clip of Wyatt laughing while a woman cries in the Mudcat parking lot after he hands her a ticket. The blogger posts. Comments swell. Loretta calls it selective context. The sheriff posts a photograph of him with a Labrador and an American flag. The algorithm feasts and shits, and nothing changes where it matters. The second act is soft violence. Nate slides a file under Dr. Pritchard's door late one night. A copy of the malpractice claim the doctor settled 20 years ago, the one no one ever found interesting enough to remember. On top a note, people forget how long a conscience can hold breath. Pritchard stares at the file like a cobra and drinks old bourbon until the room leans. The next day, he reopens his report in the system for clerical correction and adds a footnote about injury patterns inconsistent with a simple fall. The power of a footnote, a small door for a future to come through. Nate takes a week to learn Wyatt's rhythms. Wednesday night, after the Mudcat, Wyatt cuts behind the abandoned feed store and pees against the cinder block because he's human. Nate waits in the alley shadow, heartbeat about. He steps forward not with a gun, but with a recorder and a flashlight. The light blanks Wyatt, whites him out. Nate's voice is low, not angry, not loud. "Turn off the camera," he says. Wyatt freezes. "Who?" "Say it," Nate repeats. "Say the words you taught your hands to trust." Wyatt's mouth is an ugly flower. His eyes roll toward where his holster lives. Nate holds up a phone. On its screen, a paused image of the cabin zip ties, crisp as bone under museum light. Next time, Nate whispers, "I won't bring a flashlight. I'll bring a shovel." He steps back into the dark. He leaves Wyatt with his heart in his throat and the taste of panic metallic electric. Nate wants to vomit and laugh and sleep. He does none. He walks, counting breaths. In, 4, out, 4. The first body falls 2 weeks later. It is not the one you expect. Cade Harlan leaves the gym late. He likes the quiet roads where cameras sleep. He doesn't see the strip until his tires kiss it and cough. The car sags, rubber weeping. He swears and pulls into a turnout. The night is a hush with teeth. He gets out, phone in his mouth, flashlight on, voice stuffing the dark with casual curses to keep it from becoming a room. "Need a hand?" Nate asks from the shadow, tone neighborly. Cade swivels. His hand goes nowhere near his gun because Nate's posture says civilian like a vow. "Nah, I got a spare." Nate helps anyway. In the circle of light, they could be 2 men solving a small problem. The jack bites gravel. The lugnuts complain, then obey. Cade thanks him and offers a beer from his trunk, and Nate says something about early mornings. He walks away. He leaves under Cade's bumper a magnet the size of a quarter that will taste wire and talk to Nate's phone like gossip. He is gentle. He is surgical. He tells himself he is still a man who draws lines. A week after that, the magnet tells a story. Cade drove to the cabin at 1:13 a.m., left at 1:54, alone or not alone. The woods hold more than coordinates. Nate watches patterns harden into evidence. Evidence prickles into anger. Anger calcifies into resolve. He opens the lockbox and removes the gun. He closes the lockbox and puts it in his glove compartment. He tells himself he is only driving. He finds Brent Stone behind the VFW hall, smoke curling from his mouth like a sermon nobody asked for. Brent's face is the kind that craves a reason. Nate provides one. "Mr. Stone," he says. Brent squints. "You, a lawman, once off duty, always." Brent grins. The grin is tired. "You lookin' to make a point?" "I'm looking to hear a confession." "Ain't Catholic," Brent says, pushing off the wall. The distance between them shrinks until it is the size of a fist. Nate's first blow is not elegant. Grief fights like a drunk. Brent swings back and connects with a sound like a chair scraping a church floor. They stagger into light, then dark, then light again. Nate tastes blood and wonders if this is what penance is. Brent laughs, then chokes, then reaches for the gun he forgot to leave locked in the truck. Nate sees it, moves faster. The gun becomes a paperweight in someone else's testimony. Nate doesn't shoot. He hits Brent's wrist with the butt so hard the hand forgets its job. The gun clatters. Nate kicks it away like a choice. He hears himself say it, "Turn off the camera." He hears the echo of a roadside once, and he hates himself for the poetry of it. Brent spits. "You think you're a hero?" His eyes are wet. "Not with tears, with rage. You think they'll thank you?" Nate answers with quiet, because quiet did this. "I think you're going to talk," and Brent does, a little, about the cabin, about the sheriff's weak stomach for details. strong stomach for results. About Loretta, careful as a surgeon with language, cutting the tumor that might be justice out before it gets a blood supply. About Cade, a ghost who only believes in exit. About Amara, he says her name once and flinches like a dog hit after years of no. He says I didn't mean, and Nate says you did, and the sentence shaves them both. Nate records none of it. He knows it would be inadmissible. He knows he doesn't care. He leaves Brent with a shattered wrist and a choice. It is not a moral choice. It is a practical one, run or rat. Brent chooses a third thing, booze. Nate goes home and vomits quietly into a towel so the neighbors won't hear. He kneels afterward and looks at the tile and realizes he has crossed and crossed again. He is not the man he was. He is the man the ditch began building. The leak becomes a flood, and then the flood meets a dam. Loretta files a motion to seal everything that matters, citing ongoing investigations. She says a phrase Nate used to love, protecting the integrity of the process. He hears it now like a funeral dirge played too fast. Sheriff Clay Maddox tightens schedules. He moves men to different shifts so they can't synchronize guilt. He arranges a charity skeet shoot that photographs well. He visits a black church in a shirt without a tie and says Tathic words about unity. He poses with a child in a Spider-Man t-shirt and the camera loves him. He sleeps badly and dreams of dirt. Wyatt buys a second gun and hides it under his seat. He starts at noises. He flinches at kindness. His girlfriend leaves him after he hits a wall no one was leaning on. Cade notices his car rides differently over the same roads. He sits in his kitchen and stares at a water glass, thinking about magnets. Nate's friends with badges begin to step back, eyes full of warnings they can't voice. His SAC calls him in, closes the door, and does that sympathetic head tilt men do when they feel helpless. I get it, he says. I do. He slides a folded paper across the desk with a number for a counselor. You need time. He means, you need to leave this alone until it's dead and we can pretend we tried. Nate signs for leave and walks out under a fluorescent wash that takes the color out of his skin. He finds allies in unlikely places. A clerk in records, not a hero, just someone who hates being lied to. Lets a file sit on top of a pile where the sunlight can touch it. A retired state trooper with a tumor in his head hands over dashcam clips because I'm tired of funerals. A kid from the community center, Jamal with the good charcoal line, says he saw 3 cruisers with their lights off out by Old County Road and then asks if he can have the paper Nate isn't using. Each help is a small defiance. Each costs more than it looks like it should. The media begins to feed. National outlets call the event a flashpoint. They send a reporter from Atlanta with perfect eyebrows and good intentions. She interviews Nate on his porch. He says the word sonogram and the reporter's eyes widen minutely, the way America's attention does when a story gets an accessory. The package airs. The county splits like a log with a knot in it. Some cry, some yawn, some speed up when they pass his house. Protests gather, small at first, then bigger. Hollow Creek's square fills with cardboard sermons. Say her name becomes a bass. Drum, chant, breath, silence. A woman with a megaphone reads out loud the names of the county dead and a choir answers after each line. Present, someone spray paints on the courthouse steps. Who watches the watchman? Someone else, later, hoses it off like sin. The sheriff's office grows teeth. Officers in riot helmets look like insects sent by an angry god. They declare curfew. They create kettles. They push. The kid Jamal gets arrested and his drawing hand is zip-tied purple and swelling. Nate bails him out, staring at the deputy who does the paperwork until the deputy says, "You want me fired?" And Nate says, "I want you awake." Betrayals come. A colleague Nate trusted tells Clay where Nate is watching from. A woman Nate thought was a friend repeats in a group text that he always had a temper. A church acquaintance tells Loretta that the FBI husband has guns, plural, like a poem. One night, Nate comes home and his door is open. The house smells the same. It sounds the same. It has been entered with care. The lockbox sits open on the table, the gun inside untouched but looked at. A post-it note lies on top. 3 words. Don't do something. Another post-it flutters underneath. You can't undo. He feels the instruction in his bones the way you feel a coming storm in scars. He sits in the dark and holds the gun like a question he already answered. He moves forward anyway. He sends an envelope to Loretta Pike. Anonymous. Of course. Inside, a photograph of her brother's death certificate and a letter that is both sympathetic and a threat. He writes, "You know what losing feels like. Don't help them do it to others." Loretta reads it and feels heat prickle behind her eyes and hates the man whose pain she thinks she understands. She files an injunction the next morning with more verbs than usual. Wyatt disappears for 2 days. The sheriff says he's on bereavement leave, no one can verify. Brent drinks himself into a shadow and sweats out a confession to a woman, who will not repeat it because she knows what happens to women who repeat things. Cade tries to resign, then doesn't he? Writes a letter that says it has been an honor and deletes honor, then deletes been, then deletes the letter. He goes to the cabin and stands in the doorway and looks at the zip ties on the couch, and the ghost of a flag, and he wonders which sentence will save him. He decides to bet on the sheriff's hat. Nate cannot stop seeing Amara's last moments projected across every mundane surface, stovetop, windshield, his own eyelids. He stands in the ditch at night and listens. Crickets, frogs, a car far away. The silence is louder than gunfire. He makes a plan with more edges than mercy. He will isolate. He will confront. He will record. He will force a reckoning in a place where the town cannot say it didn't happen. The courthouse basement is perfect. Fluorescent, municipal, unable to lie. He lures Brent there with a text from a number that pretends to be a dispatcher. Evidence Audito 300. Brent yawns and shows up anyway because he believes in institutions when they flatter him. Nate stands in the doorway and lets Brent see him. The pause is long enough to change both their lives. Brent reaches, fails, breathe. Nate raises the gun and doesn't fire. He lowers it and asks again for a confession, this time with his phone recording and a battery back the size of a pocket Bible. Brent says her name again and it cuts. He adds details no man should know about any woman, thinks this will spread the guilt thin enough to excuse him. It doesn't. Nate stares until the words sound like insects. At the end, Brent says, "I don't sleep," as if that is the thing to pity. Nate sends the recording to 3 places at once. A friend in Jackson who is braver than policies, a journalist with eyebrows who owes him a debt now, an encrypted drive that will publish upon his death because even grief believes in redundancy. The sheriff senses the ground move. He calls a meeting in the cabin because irony is poison and he wants to drink something familiar. Loretta refuses to come. Cade comes and stands near the door, always the lightest man in any room. Wyatt shows, eyes red, hands jittery. Brent arrives last, wrist in a brace, haunted. Clay tells them to shut up until he speaks. He says they will present a united front. He says a conspiracy is a story fools tell themselves about chaos, and they are not fools. He pulls his hat low because that is where he keeps his courage. Nate watches from the trees. Night vision, greenwashing, all of it in Death's favorite color. He could shoot. He could end it. He could be the man he is told by the world to be when the world is a cornered dog. He doesn't. He records. He breathes. He chooses a harder ruin. He sends a still to the national news for men in a room where the county keeps its secrets. The still becomes a symbol. The protests swell. The chant changes. Say her name becomes say their names and then say his name. Because the crowd can smell the arc of a story and wants to predict its end. Nate feels the circle close. It happens in the courthouse because stories love symmetry. The day is unseasonably cold. Breath lifts in little ghosts. The square is a human sea, cardboard as far as sight. The steps hold people who never stand for anything but have decided the view is worth it. The sheriff's office is a hive armored with men who think the color black is a philosophy. Loretta announces a grand jury will convene to evaluate recent allegations. She thinks this is surrender and also a shield. The crowd hears the music of Maybe and Swayze's. Nate walks through them like a current under ice. He carries the gun he doesn't want and the phone that is smarter than some rooms. He carries in his mouth words he has practiced and in his pocket a will. He is not planning to die. He is planning to end. He steps into the courthouse. The marble floor echoes enough to make men believe they are important. He breathes him for out for dot in a corridor that smells like lemon pledge and old verdicts. He meets Sheriff Clay Maddox face to face for the first time since the ditch. Clay looks smaller without the sky over him. His hat is in his hands, which shake. He says softly, "Agent Cross." The voice is a man's voice, not a monster's. It makes everything worse, Sheriff Nate says. And his own voice startles him because it is calm and not the volcano he lives in now. They walk into a conference room. Brent is there, bandage off, eye purpled into a lesson. Wyatt presses his hand into a fist and then out again, practicing self-control like math. Cade stands near the window, the escape route, always a caress away. Loretta arrives last, her face a courthouse flag. A recorder sits on the table because Nate put it there already. The red light is a heart. No lawyers, Nate says. Loretta opens her mouth, closes it. "Speak," she orders Clay. Clay clears his throat. He starts a sentence with I. It doesn't land. He starts again with "we," which lands like a boot. Nate raises the gun and sets it on the table. Muzzle pointed at his own chest as if to say, "I am not the threat you need to fear." He presses the record button with a finger that does not shake. He tells the story. He tells the part with the ditch. He tells the part with the cigarette flick. He tells the part where the world is made of tiny cowardices strung together to look like a rope you can climb. Wyatt breaks first. It wasn't tied, and words fail. Tears arrive like whether he forgot to check. He sits down hard, as if the chair had been pulled out from under him. He says I'm sorry to the air because the only person he owes it to isn't in the room, and would not accept it if she were. Brent glares at the recorder like an enemy he can punch. He says, "You ain't clean, either." He means it as a curse. It is the only true blessing he will ever give. Nate nods. It's the acknowledgement of a mirror. Cade says nothing. He inches, he calculates. He chooses the window in his heart. Clay watches it all with the precise grief of a man seeing his own myth unspoken. He takes his hat and sets it on the table, and it looks like a funeral arrangement for a version of himself. He says, "Finally, I didn't tell them to," and stops, because he doesn't finish sentences he can't rebuild. He says, "I told them to turn off the camera." The recorder eats the words. The room cools. Nate exhales. The sound is a part of history now. Loretta squares her shoulders. This meeting didn't happen. She says it with the trained absurdity that gets people through days. You walk out. You go home. You delete whatever fairy tales you think the internet will love. We handle this our way. Nate smiles. It is small and sad and he taps his pocket. "Dead man switch," he says. "If I don't call off, the recordings go out. All of them." Silence falls like snow, soft and full and muffling. Clay looks at Nate the way a man looks at a cliff he knows he has to jump from to call himself honest. He says, "What do you want?" "I want my wife back," Nate says. The sentence failures into pieces. "I want my child." He swallows. "I want you to say it. On camera. I want this county to look at itself and not look away. I want to know if there is anything left in you that remembers being a person." Clay closes his eyes. He thinks of his daughter. He thinks of his hat. He thinks of night noises and the ditch and the way a cigarette tastes when you use it to mark time. He says, "I'm sorry," and it is both too little and too late, and the only medicine in the room. The door bursts open. Riot cops spill in on a bad cue, summoned by a whisper in a walkie that said danger when it meant truth. Someone shouts gun, because someone always does when there is a black man with a gun in a room. Even if that gun is pointed at his own heart, Hans shouts. The choreography of panic. Nate raises both empty hands and the room ignores his effort because it prefers its rogues. Simple. A shot cracks. The sound turns the air into glass. The bullet finds Nate's shoulder and kisses bone. He falls against the table, red blooming like a verdict you can't appeal. He hears his own breath, loud, drowning out the chorus of secured. Secured. Weapon secured. He tastes copper and thinks of Amara saying she tasted copper. He thinks this is what symmetry feels like when it isn't poetic at all. On the table, the recorder spins, still eating the room as if truth is calories. Clay shouts, "Stand down," with a sheriff's authority and a father's terror. For the first time in years, he looks like a man who could be saved, which is not the same as deserving it. Nate tries to stand. The world tilts. He sees Loretta's face above him, its angles soft with something like nausea. He sees Brent's hollowed, Wyatt's ruined. Cade is gonna door ajar. A draft, of course. Nate presses a bloody finger to the recorder and says, into its little plastic god, "Say her name." Clay whispers it, "Amara Cross." The name hangs in the fluorescent hum like incense that forgot to be holy. Outside, the crowd roars without knowing what it is, cheering or mourning. A chant rises and redistributes the grief across throats. Inside, Nate's breath is a metronome losing time. He smiles a cracked smile because he kept a promise to a woman who can't hear him anymore. The victory arrives thin as paper. The cost arrives heavy as earth. The recordings release anyway. A volunteer medic in a yellow vest, hands stained with strangers. Nate's dead man's switch by mistake when she moves his jacket in the ambulance. Somewhere, an encrypted timer calms, decides its work is done, and exhales into the world. The video's flood feeds. Clay's turn off the camera, Brent's dirty confession and his inadvertent mercy. Wyatt's apology that isn't Loretta's poised obstruction. The cabin still. Dr. Pritchard's amended footnote. The picture arranges itself like a face you suddenly recognize and wish you didn't. Arrests follow, not because the county wants them, but because national eyes force a choreography. Clay is booked without a tie. Wyatt cries in booking and asks for a Bible. Brent grins at a camera and looks like a boy about to be whipped, and his Cade vanishes. A week later, he is found in a motel 2 counties away, wrists neat. Note neat. The neatness worse than blood. Loretta offers a press conference where the word accountability is an outfit she wears. Not a skinned up Dr. Pritchard resigns and leaves his keys on a desk like a man who has been living in an office this whole time. He writes a letter that uses the word contrition in the wrong tense and means it anyway. Trials will come. They will be long. They will be a sausage grinder of testimony and technicalities and men in suits explaining why a scream is just decibels. The town will split deeper. The square will hold more cardboard and more cops. Some people will learn a new song. Some people will hum the same one louder. America will check in and then check out. Because attention is a muscle none of us train for endurance. Nate survives the bullet, which seems crueler at first to him than death would have been. The shoulder cements wrong and then right. He learns to reach without the old reach. He refuses physical therapy exactly twice, and then obeys like a soldier because the therapists speak the only language that matters. Pain converted to function. He does not go back to the bureau. He cannot. He leaves his badge and his sidearm in a box that looks like memory and mails it to a post office where a clerk will scan the barcode and not know he is scanning a life. He moves into Amara's studio at the community center and inhales paint until he starts to recognize mornings again. He teaches children how light argues with shape. He shows them how shadows can tell the truth even when the thing making them won't. Is gentle with Jamal's wrist and watches the purple drain out of it over weeks like a storm. Leaving a field, he keeps Amara's brushes and a coffee tin. He never cleans them perfectly on purpose. When the verdicts arrive years later, appeals braided through them like snakes. Justice looks like numbers on a board, 30 with parole possibility, 15 in a regretful bench speech, an acquittal that makes a whole pew groan in unison like an organ note. Clay takes the longest sentence because the hat weighs more in the eyes of men who judge on scales. Brent gets a number that feels wrong until you remember numbers are not feelings. Wyatt testifies against the others and finds no redemption in it. Loretta loses an election and takes a job in a neighboring county doing the same work with different curtains. The cabin burns one night. No one calls it arson. The woods call it winter. Nate stands again at the ditch. He brings a small stone he carried in his pocket since the ambulance ride. He presses it into the muddy bank like an offering. He says her name aloud into a night that remembers. Amara. The crickets pause, as if polite. He talks to her there. About the children who surprised him with kindness when he expected tin. About a girl who drew a police officer small and a black woman big and called it balance. About the boy who learned to count his breaths not for fear but for focus. In, for, out for. He tells her he loves her with a word that changed shape but not meaning. He tells her he kept his promise and also broke himself on it. Then one morning, years later, he does not wake up. Sleeping is how the body returns loans, and grief charged him double. He dies at home in a bed he made and a house where the sonogram still lives under a magnet shaped like a pelican. His heart stops as gently as he taught himself to breathe. In, for, out, for, out. Hollow Creek gets another funeral. The preacher says what preachers say when they need to make a room survivable. The choir sings a song that makes old women nod like they are remembering the names of their first dead. The sheriff's office sends a wreath because institutions love flowers. Children line the steps of the community center with drawings of a woman smiling with a belly round as a moon and a man holding her hand. The drawings look like Hope's handwriting. At dusk, the square fills once more. No chant this time, just silence. The kind that holds hands lift candles. Breathing sinks. A mural appears under the courthouse portico a week later. No one commissioned it. It shows a black woman with eyes the color of stubborn sunlight and a man standing beside her, both looking straight at you. Behind them, pine shadows. In the corner, in charcoal small enough to find only if you want to, a baby's handprint. Justice happened. Justice failed. Justice tried. Justice cost. The town keeps going, because towns do. The clock still misses noon by 3 minutes. A habit that feels like a promise. We will never get it exactly right, but we will ring anyway. Turn off the camera, they said. We did in single quotes, T. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like and share and stay tuned for more stories.